300 years ago, a small blue planet sent a message into the dark emptiness of space. The message was simple. It said, "We are humanity. We wish only peace. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone." The great powers of the galaxy received this message and laughed. They called themselves the Galactic Concord, an alliance of 47 different species from across the stars. They had conquered thousands of worlds. They had weapons that could burn entire planets. They looked at the little blue planet called Earth and saw nothing but weak creatures who had barely learned to travel between their own planets. Admiral Una stood on the bridge of her ship, the Dandelion Seed. She was a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes. Her grandmother had told her stories about the old days when humans fought each other in terrible wars. They had burned cities. They had created bombs that could destroy everything. They had nearly killed their own world. But then humanity made a choice. They put down their weapons. They stopped building machines of war. They became farmers and teachers and healers. They called themselves the quiet children of Saul, named after their son. For 300 years they lived in peace. They grew food on Mars. They built beautiful cities on the moons of Jupiter. They made art and music and poetry. They were happy, but they were not stupid. Una looked at the young officer beside her. His name was Tejo, and he was barely 30 years old. He had never seen war. None of them had. War was something from old books and sad stories. "Admiral," Tejo said, his voice shaking, "the conquered fleet has arrived, 2,000 warships." Una closed her eyes. She had known this day would come. The conquered had been watching humanity for decades. They wanted Earth's resources. They wanted human slaves. They did not believe that any species could truly choose peace over power. "Show me," she said. The viewing screen lit up, and Una felt her heart grow cold. The conquered fleet was massive. Thousands of ships filled the darkness of space, each one bristling with weapons. They were shaped like insects and monsters and nightmares. Against them, humanity had only 50 small ships designed for exploration and trade. The communication screen crackled. A face appeared, if it could be called a face. Commander Vithal of the Conquered was a creature with 6 eyes and sharp mandibles that clicked when he spoke. His species had conquered 100 worlds. He had personally destroyed civilizations. "Humans," Vithal said, his voice filled with amusement. "You have something we want, your planets, your resources, your bodies for labor. Surrender now and we will be merciful. Resist and we will burn your worlds to ash." Una looked at him calmly. "We sent you a message 300 years ago. We asked to be left alone." Vithal laughed. It was an ugly sound. "You are weak. You have no weapons. You have no military. You are farmers and dreamers. What will you do? Throw seeds at us?" Una turned to Tejo. "Send them our response. The same message we sent 300 years ago, word for word." Tejo hesitated. "Admiral, maybe we should try to negotiate." "Send it." The young officer obeyed. Across the void of space, Vithal received the message. He read it and clicked his mandibles in confusion. "We wish only peace. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone." The same words, nothing more. "They repeat themselves like broken machines," Vithal said to his officers. "They have lost their minds with fear. Begin the assault. Take their outer colonies first. Kill anyone who resists." His fleet began to move forward. 2,000 ships of death and destruction moving toward the helpless humans. But deep in the darkness between the stars, something stirred. Una watched the enemy fleet advance. Her hands were steady, but her heart was breaking. She thought of her grandmother's words. "We became gardeners because we were tired of being soldiers." But Una, never forget, we were very, very good soldiers. Humanity had not spent 3 centuries being weak. They had spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment. They had prayed every day that it would never come. They had hoped the universe would simply leave them alone, but they had prepared anyway. In the cold depths of the Uit cloud, far beyond the warmth of the sun, there were hidden stations. 900 of them buried in ice and darkness. Inside these stations were weapons. Not ordinary weapons. These were things of nightmare. Machines that could tear holes in reality itself. Devices that could collapse stars into nothingness. Humanity had created these weapons and then locked them away in shame. They had sworn to never use them. They had built a peaceful society and tried to forget what they were capable of, but they had never destroyed the weapons, just in case. Yuna pressed a button on her console. It was a simple button, small and red. She had hoped she would never have to press it. All gardeners, she spoke into the communication system, this is Admiral Yuna. The warning has been ignored. They did not listen. Initiate protocol Dandelion. Across 900 hidden stations, alarms began to sound. Men and women who had spent their lives in secret training suddenly woke up. They moved to their positions. They input their codes. They activated machines that had slept for 300 years, and then the stars themselves seemed to move. Vithal was laughing at a joke one of his officers made when his tactical display suddenly went crazy. Lights flashed, warnings screamed. Something was happening, something his sensors could not understand. "What is this?" he demanded. "What is happening?" His science officer stared at her screen with all 6 eyes wide with terror. "Commander, I am detecting massive energy signatures. They are coming from everywhere, from empty space, from places where nothing should exist." The darkness between the stars began to glow. 900 weapons activated at the same moment. Space itself seemed to scream as forces beyond imagination tore through the void. The conquered fleet, 2,000 ships strong, suddenly found themselves surrounded by light and fire and death. Yuna watched as the first weapon fired. It was called a gravity lance, and it could crush matter down to nothing. A beam of impossible force shot across space and hit the center of the conquered formation. 50 ships simply vanished, pulled into a point smaller than a grain of sand. The rest of the conquered fleet stopped moving. They stared in horror at the impossible weapons now aimed at them from every direction. Yuna's face appeared on every screen in the enemy fleet. There were tears running down her cheeks. "We told you to leave us alone," she said, her voice soft and sad. "We told you 300 years ago. We are not warriors. We do not want this, but if you force our hand, we will end this war in an hour. Please, we are begging you. Turn around. Go home. Let us be gardeners again." Vithal stared at the human woman with new eyes. For the first time in his long life, he felt true fear. What had he awakened? In the frozen darkness at the edge of the solar system, a woman named Jizu opened her eyes. Red lights flashed above her sleeping pod. Alarms screamed through the metal walls of the station. Her body was cold and stiff from 3 years of frozen sleep, but her mind was sharp. She knew what those alarms meant. The station was called Seed Vault 7. It floated in the Uit cloud, a place so far from the sun that light took years to reach it. No one knew this place existed. It was not on any map. It was humanity's darkest secret. Jizu pulled herself out of the sleeping pod and fell to the cold floor. Her muscles were weak from years of sleep, but she forced herself to stand. Around her, other pods were opening. Other engineers were waking up. They all had the same look in their eyes. Fear mixed with terrible sadness. "All gardeners, this is Central Command." The voice came through the speakers, calm but heavy with grief. "The warning has been ignored. The conquered has attacked. Initiate Protocol Dandelion." Protocol Dandelion. 3 words that every gardener prayed they would never hear. Jizu walked to her station on legs that shook. The other engineers moved beside her, silent as ghosts. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. They had trained for this moment for their entire lives, but they had always hoped it was just practice. They had hoped the weapons would never need to wake up. Below the control room, something massive waited in the darkness. It was a machine the size of a small moon, built piece by piece over 10 generations. Jizu's grandmother had worked on it. Her mother had worked on it. Now it was her turn. "Beginning activation sequence," Jizu said, her voice barely a whisper. Her fingers moved across the controls. Beside her, an old man named Dongwu input his own codes. His hands were shaking badly and tears ran down his wrinkled face. "I helped build this thing," he said quietly. 60 years ago. I always told myself it would never be used. I told myself we were just being careful." Jizu put her hand on his shoulder. "We all told ourselves that." The machine below them began to hum. Lights flickered on in the vast chamber. Something ancient and terrible was waking up. Far away, in the warmth of the inner solar system, Admiral Yuna watched the conquered fleet through her viewing screen. They had stopped moving after she destroyed 50 of their ships. They were scared, but they had not retreated. Admiral Tejo said, "The conquered commander is asking to speak with you. Put him through." Vithal's face appeared on the screen. His 6 eyes were wide and his mandibles clicked nervously. He looked very different from the proud conqueror of an hour ago. "Human," he said. "What did you do? How did you do that? You have no military. Our spies have watched you for decades. You grow food. You make art. You teach your children songs." Yuna looked at him sadly. "Yes, we do all those things. That is who we chose to be, but it is not who we were. I do not understand." Yuna stood up from her chair and walked closer to the screen. 300 years ago, we almost destroyed ourselves. We had weapons that could burn the sky. We had bombs that could poison the ground for 1,000 years. We killed millions of our own people in our wars. We were very good at killing." She paused, and her eyes grew distant with old pain. "Then we stopped. We looked at what we had become and we were disgusted. We buried our weapons. We destroyed our warships. We decided to become something better, gardeners instead of soldiers, healers instead of killers." "But you kept the weapons," Vithal said slowly. "Yes." Yuna's voice was heavy with shame. "We buried them. We hid them in the dark places where no one would find them. We hoped we would never need them again. We created a whole society of peace and beauty and kindness, but underneath it all we never forgot what we were capable of." Vithal stared at her. "You tricked us. You pretended to be weak." "No," Yuna shook her head. "We are not weak. We are not pretending. We truly want peace. We truly love our gardens and our art and our children's songs. But we also know that some predators do not understand kindness. Some predators only understand strength." She stepped even closer to the screen. 300 years ago, we told you to leave us alone. We asked nicely. We asked peacefully. You laughed at us. You called us farmers and dreamers. You came here with 2,000 ships to kill our children and take our homes." Her eyes hardened. "Now you see what farmers can do when you threaten their families." In the Uit cloud, Jizu pressed the final button. The machine beneath her station roared to life. Space itself seemed to bend around it. She felt sick to her stomach, not from the machine but from what she was doing. All around the solar system, 899 other stations were doing the same thing. Weapons that could crush planets, tear holes in space, turn matter into energy. All of them waking up at the same moment. "God forgive us," Jizu whispered. Old Dong Wu sat down heavily in his chair. "We are not gods," he said quietly. "We are just gardeners who remember how to be wolves." On the dandelion seed, Admiral Yuna received reports from across the fleet. All 900 weapons were active. They had enough firepower to destroy the entire Concord. Not just this fleet, but their home worlds, their colonies, everything they had ever built. And that terrified her more than anything. "Commander Vithal," she said, "you have 1 hour to retreat. Take your ships and go home. Tell your leaders what you saw here today. Tell them that humanity wants peace. We have always wanted peace. But if anyone ever threatens us again, we will not just defend ourselves." She leaned forward and her voice dropped to something cold and hard. "We will find your home worlds. We will find every ship, every station, every colony your people have ever built. And we will make sure nothing is left. Not because we want to, not because we enjoy it, but because we learned a long time ago that the only way to stop a war forever is to make sure there is no one left to fight it." Vithal's mandibles clicked in horror. You would destroy entire species." Yuna's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. I pray I never have to find out. Please, Commander, please just go home. Let me put these weapons back to sleep. Let me go back to being a grandmother who tells stories to her grandchildren. Please do not make me become the monster I used to be." For a long moment, Vithal said nothing. He looked at the human woman with her tears and her terrible weapons, and he finally understood something important. The most dangerous creature in the universe is not the one that loves violence. It is the one that hates violence so much that it will do anything to make it stop forever. "I need to speak with my council," he said finally. "I need to tell them what I have seen." "You have 1 hour," Yuna said. "After that, we will assume you have chosen war." The screen went dark. Yuna sat down in her chair and buried her face in her hands. Around her, her crew waited in silence. They could hear her crying soft, broken sounds that seemed too small for such a powerful woman. "Admiral," Tejo said gently, "are you all right?" Yuna looked up at him with red eyes. "No," she said honestly. "I will never be all right again. None of us will. We spent 300 years becoming good people, and now we have to remember how to be monsters." She wiped her tears away and straightened her shoulders. "But we will do what we must for our children, for our gardens, for everything beautiful that we built." She looked out at the stars. "We told them to leave us alone. They should have listened." On the colony world of New Bizin, the sky was burning. A woman named Hyung gathered her students in the underground shelter. She had been a teacher for 30 years, and she loved her job more than anything in the world. She loved watching children learn. She loved seeing their eyes light up when they understood something new. She loved the peaceful life she had built on this beautiful world. Now enemy ships were falling from the sky like angry stars, and everything was about to change. "Teacher," a small boy named Minyu said, pulling on her sleeve. "Are we going to die?" Hyung knelt down beside him. He was 7 years old with big eyes and messy hair. He reminded her of her own son at that age before he grew up and moved to Earth to become a doctor. "No, Minyu," she said softly. "We are not going to die, but I need to tell you something important, something about our people that we do not teach in schools." The other children gathered around her. There were 15 of them, ranging from 6 to 12 years old. They were scared. They could hear the explosions above them, feel the ground shake beneath their feet. "A long time ago," Hyung began, "humans were not peaceful. We were fighters. We were very, very good at fighting. We made weapons that could destroy cities. We killed millions of each other in terrible wars." "Why?" a girl named Sujin asked. "Because we were scared, because we were angry, because we did not know any other way," Hyung sighed. "But then we learned. We learned that fighting only brings more fighting. We learned that the only way to have peace is to choose peace. So we put away our weapons and became farmers and teachers and artists." "But the aliens are attacking us," Minyu said. "What will we do if we have no weapons?" Hyung was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, but it was a sad smile. "We lied. Not to ourselves. We truly wanted to be peaceful. We truly tried to forget how to fight. But deep down in the dark places, we always remembered and we always prepared." Above them, the conquered landing ships touched down on the surface of New Bizin. Soldiers poured out, creatures with ape legs and sharp teeth, tall beings made of metal and stone, thin figures with too many eyes. They expected no resistance. Every report said that humans had no military, no weapons, no soldiers. In the main square of the colony, they found a single human standing alone. His name was Junho. He was 43 years old, a farmer who grew vegetables and raised chickens. His hands were rough from work in the fields. His face was weathered from years under the alien sun. He looked like exactly what he was, a simple man who lived a simple life. He stood with his hands empty, his expression sad. The conquered soldiers surrounded him. There were hundreds of them, armed with weapons that could turn a person to ash in seconds. Their leader, a creature with 8 legs and poison fangs, stepped forward. "Human," it hissed. "Where are the others? Where are your warriors?" "We have no warriors," Junho said quietly. "We are farmers, we grow food, we raise families, we want no trouble." The creature laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Then you will be easy to conquer. Kneel before me, slave." Junho did not kneel. Instead, he looked at the creature with something strange in his eyes. Not fear, not anger, but deep, terrible sadness. "Please," he said, "we have children here, families. There is still time to leave. We do not want to hurt you." The creature raised its weapon. "You hurt us. You are one soft creature against 500 soldiers. What could you possibly?" Junho moved. The alien did not see him move. No one saw him move. One moment the human was standing still with his hands at his sides. The next moment the alien leader was dead on the ground with its neck broken and Junho was holding its weapon. The soldiers stared in shock. Then the square exploded into chaos. Hidden panels in the buildings slid open. Combat drones rose into the air, machines that had slept for centuries, waiting for this moment. Citizens who had been hiding in their homes stepped out onto the streets. Teachers and doctors and shopkeepers pulled weapons from secret places and aimed them at the invaders. Their eyes were hard. Their hands were steady. They looked like farmers and artists and ordinary people, but they moved like soldiers who had trained their entire lives because they had. Every human on New Bizon, every human in the entire solar system, knew how to fight. It was taught in secret, in hidden rooms and underground facilities. It was never spoken about in public. Children learned to read and write and do math, and they also learned to kill with their bare hands. They hoped they would never use this knowledge, but they practiced anyway, just in case. The battle in the square lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, every alien soldier was dead and not a single human had been hurt. The colonists stood among the bodies, their weapons lowered, their faces pale. Junho dropped the alien weapon on the ground. His hands were shaking badly. He looked at them like they belonged to someone else, someone he did not want to be. Around him, his neighbors were having the same reaction. These were good people, kind people, people who grew flowers and baked bread and read stories to their children at night. They had just killed 500 aliens in 12 minutes without losing a single person. "I'm sorry," Junho whispered. He was not talking to anyone in particular. Maybe he was talking to himself. Maybe he was talking to the dead aliens. Maybe he was talking to the peaceful man he had been that morning before he remembered what he really was. In the shelter below the square, Hyung heard the sounds of battle fade into silence. She held Minyu close to her chest and prayed that it was over. Her communication device buzzed. A voice came through, a man's voice, rough with emotion. "The surface is secure," the voice said. "The invaders are gone." Minyu looked up at her. "Did we win, teacher?" Hyung did not answer immediately. She thought about what winning meant. They had survived. They had protected their children, but they had also killed. They had become the thing they never wanted to be. "Yes," she finally said, "we won." But her voice was hollow and her eyes were full of tears. Above them, Junho walked through the silent square. Bodies lay everywhere. The smell of smoke and death filled the air. Other colonists were gathering, looking at the destruction with expressions of horror and grief. A young woman named Yoonji approached him. She was one of the shopkeepers, barely 25 years old. There was blood on her hands, alien blood, but blood all the same. "Junho," she said, her voice shaking. "What have we done?" He looked at her sadly. "What we had to do. What we always knew we might have to do. But we're not soldiers, we're not killers. She stopped, unable to finish. "We're human," Junho said quietly. "We are gardeners who remember how to be wolves. We are peaceful people who never forgot how to make war. We hated this part of ourselves. We buried it deep and hoped it would stay buried forever." He looked up at the sky, where fire still burned from the crashed landing ships. "But when someone threatens our children, the wolf wakes up, and the wolf does not show mercy." Yoonji followed his gaze. "Do you think there will be more soldiers, more ships?" "Maybe," Junho said. "But by now Admiral Yuna has shown them what we can do. If they have any sense, they will run away and never come back." He walked toward the shelter, toward the children who needed to know they were safe. "And if they don't have sense," he added quietly, "then God help them because we won't." The great hall of the Galactic Concord was silent. Hundreds of aliens from dozens of different species sat in their seats, staring at the holographic display in the center of the room. None of them moved. None of them spoke. They had just watched their greatest fleet be destroyed in less than an hour. Commander Vithal stood before them, his body bent with exhaustion and fear. He had returned with only 400 ships, all that remained of the 2,000 he had taken to conquer humanity. And those 400 had only survived because the humans had let them go. "Show them everything," the High Chancellor ordered. His name was Marath, and he was the leader of the Conquered. He was an ancient creature, a being made of living crystal that had ruled for 600 years. He had never known fear. He was afraid now. Vithal pressed a button on his console. The holographic display lit up with recordings from the battle. The gathered aliens watched in horror as 50 ships vanished in an instant, crushed by a weapon that bent gravity itself. They watched as their mighty fleet scattered in panic. They watched as more and more impossible weapons appeared from nowhere. Weapons that moved through space, weapons that turned shields into death traps, weapons that made the laws of physics seem like suggestions. "This is impossible," someone whispered. "Humans are farmers, they have no technology like this." "They did not have this technology," Vithal said, his voice hollow. "They built it 300 years ago when they were still a military species. Then they buried it. They hid it in the dark spaces between their planets. They pretended to be peaceful while keeping the power to destroy everything." A thin creature with too many eyes stood up from its seat. It was Ambassador Wreath, representative of the Yith species. "Why would they do this? Why pretend to be weak?" "They were not pretending to be weak," Vithal said. He pressed another button on his console. "This is their admiral, watch her face." Admiral Yuna appeared on the display. She was giving her final warning to the conquered fleet, telling them to retreat. Tears were running down her human face. Her voice was shaking with grief. "People of the conquered," the recording said, "we did not want this. 300 years ago we made a choice. We chose peace. We chose to grow, to learn, to heal. We buried our weapons. We tried to become better than what we were, but we never forgot how to be what we were. We hoped, we prayed that we would never have to remember. You have made us remember. You have made us wake the sleeping wolves." The recording continued. Every alien in the hall watched as the human woman begged them to leave. She was not threatening them. She was pleading with them. She was crying. "Please," the recording said, "we are begging you. Leave us alone. Let us go back to being gardeners. Because if you make us fight, if you truly make us fight, we will not stop until there is nothing left to fight, and we will spend eternity hating ourselves for it." The recording ended. The hall was silent. High Chancellor Moreth's crystal body pulsed with light, a sign of strong emotion. He had lived for 600 years. He had conquered 100 worlds. He had never seen anything like this. "She was crying," he said slowly. "She was destroying our fleet with weapons we cannot comprehend, and she was crying." "Yes," Vithal said. "They all were, their entire crew. They were winning the greatest battle in galactic history, and they were weeping like children who had done something terrible." Ambassador Wreath shook his head in confusion. "What kind of species cries while destroying their enemies?" "A species that knows exactly what it is capable of," Moreth answered. "A species that is terrified of itself." He stood up from his ancient throne and walked slowly toward the holographic display. For a long moment, he stared at the frozen image of Admiral Yuna's tearful face. "We have made a terrible mistake," he said finally. "We thought humans were like the other peaceful species we have encountered. We thought their refusal to fight was weakness. We thought they had simply forgotten how to make war." He turned to face the gathered aliens. "We were wrong. Humans did not forget how to make war. They chose to stop making war. They looked at their weapons and their violence and their endless conflicts, and they decided they did not want to be that thing anymore. They built a civilization of peace and beauty and art. They raised their children to be kind and gentle and good." His voice grew heavy with something that might have been respect. But underneath it all, they never forgot. They kept their weapons. They trained in secret. They prepared for the day when some fool would force them to remember what they really were. He gestured at the display. "And now we have forced them to remember. We woke the sleeping wolves, and we have seen what wolves can do." A young alien officer stood up. His species was called the Kororan, and they were known as fierce warriors. "We could fight back," he said, though his voice was uncertain. "We could gather all our fleets. We could what?" Vithal interrupted. "They destroyed 60% of our attack fleet in 19 minutes. 19 minutes, and that was with just a few of their weapons. They have 900 stations filled with things like that. If we attack them again," he could not finish the sentence. Moreth nodded slowly. "If we attack them again, they will not hold back. They will not send warning shots. They will come to our home worlds with their gravity weapons and their reality-breaking machines, and they will make sure we can never threaten them again." "They would destroy entire species?" the Kororan officer asked. Moreth looked at him sadly. "Did you hear what their admiral said? They spent 300 years trying to become good people. They truly wanted to be gardeners and artists and teachers. But when we threatened their children, they remembered who they used to be." He paused. "Humans nearly destroyed their own world in their ancient wars. They killed millions of their own kind. They have experience with total war. They have experience with weapons that can end civilizations. They are not proud of this experience. They hate it, but they will use it if they have to. The hall fell silent again. Every alien was thinking the same thing. They had believed themselves to be the masters of the galaxy. They had conquered countless worlds. They had feared nothing. Now they had found something to fear. "What do we do?" Ambassador Reith asked quietly. Morath returned to his throne and sat down heavily. His crystal body flickered with strange colors, embarrassment perhaps, or resignation. "We do what they asked us to do 300 years ago," he said. "We leave them alone." "That's it?" the Kororan officer asked. "We just give up. We accept reality," Morath corrected. "The humans do not want war. They do not want conquest. They do not want to rule the galaxy. They want to grow their gardens and raise their children and live in peace." He looked at the frozen image of Yuna on the display. "If we leave them alone, they will go back to being the gentle species they have tried so hard to become. The wolves will sleep again. But if we provoke them again, if we threaten them again, if we give them any reason to believe we are a danger to their families, they will not stop at the fence. They will come for us, all of us. They will use their terrible weapons to make absolutely sure that no one can ever threaten them again." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And they will cry while they do it. They will weep for us. They will hate themselves forever, but they will do it anyway because that is what humans are. They are the most gentle monsters in the universe, the most merciful killers, the most peaceful destroyers." He waved his crystal hand, dismissing the display. "Send a message to the human admiral. Tell her we accept her terms. Tell her we will leave human space and never return. Tell her we are sorry for forcing her to remember what she used to be." The order was given. The message was sent. And across the galaxy, species began to tell stories about the humans. The quiet gardeners who had hidden the power to destroy gods and who only wanted to be left alone. 1 year had passed since the war that was not really a war. The fighting had lasted 43 hours. In that time, humanity had destroyed over 1,600 enemy warships, killed tens of thousands of alien soldiers, and shown the entire galaxy what they were capable of. They had won completely and absolutely without losing a single human life, and they had never been more ashamed. Admiral Yuna stood in a field of flowers on Earth. It was spring and the world was beautiful. Birds sang in the trees. Bees moved from blossom to blossom. A gentle wind carried the smell of fresh grass and growing things. She had not worn her uniform in 6 months. She was dressed in simple clothes, the kind a grandmother might wear to work in her garden. Her hands, which had once given orders to destroy fleets, now held a small tool for planting seeds, but she was not planting today. She was just standing there, looking at the sky, thinking about everything that had happened. Tejo found her in the late afternoon. He was not wearing his uniform either. No one wore uniforms anymore. The fleet had been reduced to a handful of exploration ships. The weapons were being dismantled. The hidden stations were going back to sleep. "Admiral," he said, then corrected himself. "I mean, Yuna, sorry, I'm still getting used to the change." She smiled sadly. "It is all right. What is the news?" "The Conquered has officially dissolved. They are forming a new alliance." Tejo pulled out a small device and showed her the report. "They want to call it the Sol Accord, named after our son, named after us." Yuna was quiet for a moment. "That is unexpected. They are asking if we will join. They want us to lead it." She shook her head slowly. "No, we will not lead anything. We are not leaders. We are not warriors. We never wanted to be." "Then what will you tell them?" Yuna bent down and touched one of the flowers, a dandelion, its white seeds ready to float away on the wind. "I will tell them we wish them well. I will tell them to build something beautiful with their new alliance. I will tell them to remember what happened here and to make sure it never happens again." She gently blew on the dandelion and watched the seeds scatter into the air. "And I will tell them to never make us remember again." Tejo nodded. He understood. They all understood. The entire human species had made a collective decision in the months after the war. They would go back to being gardeners. They would seal the weapons away. They would return to their peaceful lives and try to forget what they had done. But they would not destroy the weapons. They could not destroy the weapons because somewhere out there beyond the stars there might be another threat, another species that looked at peaceful humans and saw only easy prey. Another enemy that did not believe in kindness and mercy. The weapons would wait in their hidden places, patient, eternal, ready, just in case. Yuna walked slowly through the field, touching flowers as she passed. Tejo walked beside her in silence. There was nothing left to say. They had been soldiers and now they were trying to be something else, something better. Do you think they will truly leave us alone? Tejo asked finally. Yes, Yuna said. I do. We scared them, not because we destroyed their fleet. They have lost fleets before. We scared them because we cried while we did it. We scared them because we begged them to run away. We scared them because they finally understood what we are. And what are we? Yuna stopped walking. She looked up at the sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. We are a species that learned the hardest lesson in the universe. We learned that violence only leads to more violence. We learned that wars never really end. They just plant seeds for future wars. We learned that the only way to truly win is to refuse to fight. She turned to face Tejo. But we also learned that sometimes you cannot refuse. Sometimes predators come to your door and you have to show them your teeth. You have to remind them that the gentle creature in front of them used to be a wolf. She looked back at the field of flowers. The trick is remembering how to be gentle again afterward. The trick is putting the wolf back to sleep. In the Uit cloud, Engineer Jizu was shutting down Seed Vault 7. The great weapon beneath her station had gone back into its long sleep. The lights were dimming. The hum of power was fading away. She was the last one left. The other engineers had already gone home, back to their families and their normal lives. She had stayed behind to make sure everything was properly sealed. Old Dongwu had died 2 months ago, peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by his grandchildren. He had told them stories about the stars, but never about the weapon he had helped build. Some secrets were not meant to be shared. Jizu pressed the final button. The station went dark. Only emergency lights remained, casting red shadows across the empty halls. Sleep well, she whispered to the machine below. I hope I never have to wake you again. She walked to the shuttle that would take her home. Behind her, the station grew smaller and smaller, until it was just another point of light in the endless darkness. On New Bizan, Hyung was teaching again. Her classroom was full of children, including young Minyu, who had grown so much in the past year. They were learning about plants today, how seeds grew, how flowers bloomed, how forests could recover from fire. No one talked about the war. No one talked about the terrible day when aliens had invaded and humans had shown their true nature. It was not forbidden to talk about it. People simply did not want to remember. The children knew, of course. They had been there. They had seen the adults they trusted transform into something hard and dangerous and frightening. They had watched their peaceful colony turn into a battlefield. But children are strong. They heal. They move forward. Minyu raised his hand. Teacher, why do dandelions spread their seeds so far? Hyung smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine. Because they want to grow everywhere. They want to spread beauty to every corner of the world, even places that seem empty, especially places that seem empty. That is where new gardens are needed most. After class, Junho came to pick up his nephew. He was still a farmer, still growing vegetables and raising chickens. His hands were rough from work, just as they had always been. You would never know, looking at him, that he had killed an alien commander with those hands. How is the farm? Hyung asked. Growing, Junho said. Always growing. I planted some new flowers last week. Earth flowers, roses and tulips, they seem to like the soil here. That is good. We need more flowers. Junho was quiet for a moment. Then he said, the galaxy is watching us, you know, the other species. They are telling stories about us, scary stories. I know. Some of the stories say we are monsters in disguise, wolves pretending to be sheep. Hyung looked at her classroom, at the drawings on the walls and the plants on the windowsill and the small chairs where children sat to learn about the universe. We are not wolves pretending to be sheep, she said firmly. We are wolves who chose to become gardeners. There is a difference. Is there? Yes, she turned to face him. Wolves cannot help being wolves. They are born to hunt and kill, but we chose to be different. We looked at our claws and our teeth and we said, we do not want to use these anymore. We built gardens instead of armies. We raised children instead of soldiers. She touched his arm gently. We are not pretending to be peaceful, Junho. We truly are peaceful. We truly want nothing but to grow our gardens and love our families and watch the stars. The wolf is not who we are. It is who we used to be. Junho nodded slowly. But the wolf is still there, sleeping. Yes, Hyung admitted. The wolf is still there and it always will be. That is the burden we carry. That is the price of being human. She looked out the window at the sky where alien ships would never come again. We are the most dangerous species in the galaxy because we know how terrible we can be. We have seen our worst selves. We have looked into the darkness and understood it. And we choose every single day to be something better. She smiled at him. That is what makes us human, not the wolf, not the weapons, not the power to destroy. What makes us human is the choice to build instead of break, to heal instead of hurt, to plant gardens instead of graves. Junho smiled back. It was a tired smile, a sad smile, but it was real. I think I will plant more roses tomorrow, he said. The red ones, they are my wife's favorite. He took his nephew's hand and walked home through the peaceful streets of New Bizen. And somewhere out there, in the dark spaces between the stars, 900 weapons slept in their frozen tombs, patient, eternal, ready, just in case. But humanity hoped and prayed that just in case would never come again. Tahi wanted to be gardeners forever. They wanted the wolves to sleep. And for now, in the quiet of a galaxy that had learned to respect them, they could tend their gardens in peace.